Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we put the business back in lady business. Hosted by Jennifer Justice, founder and CEO of the Justice Department, a management, strategy, and law firm that works with female and woke male entrepreneurs, executives, talent, brands, and creatives to build and maximize their wealth, focusing in the areas of tech, consumer product, finance, media, entertainment, and fashion. Jennifer interviews entrepreneurial women who have done it all, who will be sharing their secrets on all things business, especially as a woman. These highly successful women will share strategies and insights, including what not to do and what it takes to win. And now, here's your host, Jennifer Justice.
Hi, this is JJ, the host of this podcast, Taking Care of Lady Business. If you're here, you know my passion for making women rich. Did you know that men are 4 times more likely than women to negotiate their compensation packages? And that women are leaving about $1.5 million on the table by the time they're 60 by not negotiating? That's a lot of money, and I want it to stop. So I'm launching a course called Be the Boss of Your Career to show you how to get what you deserve. Our first live session is May 3rd, so go to www.thejusticedept.com to sign up for more information. I look forward to seeing you there and helping you get rich. Thanks to MedJet for supporting the Lady Business podcast. If you're hospitalized or your security is threatened while traveling, they can get you home. I'm a MedJet member and have been for years. Everyone who travels should be. Enroll before your next trip at medjet.com. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today, we have the fabulous Chelsea Leyland. She is the founder of Looni, and she's an advocate and a DJ, and we're going to hear all about her advocacy work and everything else. Hi, Chelsea. Welcome.
Hi, JJ. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Especially because she's in an exotic locale right now, so she's taken this time. You know, I'm sure there's a beach and sand somewhere outside of her door right now. So thank you for taking the time. So let's dive into everything that you've been doing. I've originally met you as a DJ, right? You'd been DJing a lot out east and I mean all over New York City, etc. You became an advocate for epilepsy and endometriosis because you have personal experience with both. And then you became a co-founder of Looni, which helps to deal with some of these things, right? So let's dive into it. Let's first start about Looni and what that is.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. So Looni is a menstrual health and wellness company. We currently have one product in market, which is a supplement to help support hormone balance. So it really specifically helps with low mood and improving PMS symptoms. And the mission behind Looni is very authentic because it really pertains to my own struggle with endometriosis, which is a menstrual health condition. And I'm sure many of your listeners have heard of it. Some might even have it or another menstrual health condition. But for those that don't have it, this is a condition that affects 1 in 10 women or menstruators. And it is an autoimmune condition whereby the lining, similar to the lining of the uterus, starts to grow outside of the uterus. So that can be on the exterior wall of the uterus, and it can also be in other areas of the body. It is as prevalent as diabetes, which is quite crazy given how under-researched it is.
Yeah.
In terms of just how it can manifest is with extremely painful periods, pain during intercourse, heavy bleeding, infertility. So, it's a very, very debilitating condition to live with, and it affects people very differently. And you can have stage 4 endometriosis and be asymptomatic, and you can have stage 1 endometriosis and spend 2 weeks of your cycle in bed because you're in so much pain. So it really depends. But that really acted as the foundation for co-founding Looni and wanting to help support other people who, struggling with their menstrual cycles, not just with a menstrual health condition, but just with their menstrual cycles. So our mission at Looni is to elevate the menstrual cycle and demystify hormonal health.
So how long, let's go back to your endometriosis diagnosis. Like, I know from so many people who suffered from it, a lot of time it takes a long time to diagnose. What was that? What was your case?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the average diagnosis time for endo is 10 years. Mine
Why does
was
that take so long?
That is really like the big question. And I think the reason it takes so long, well, there's a lot to unpack when we talk about menstrual cycles generally, but I think there is a lack of awareness from the physician side. Everything, I think, really distills down to education. Educating physicians, if they were learning about endometriosis in medical school, then they would be better equipped to, recognize the signs and symptoms of this condition. I think there's also other issues surrounding, medical gaslighting, which is really, medical misogyny, living under a patriarchal society for so long, which means that women were excluded from clinical trials up until 1993.
Mm.
It's wild, which means that we just haven't done enough research into these conditions. And I think what we've done is we've normalized pain for women. And I think that is, such a big issue when we think about menstrual health or just hormonal health, where the menopause sits under that. We've normalized pain for women. So, you hear, and I hear friends saying this the whole time, it's just like, oh, I'm feeling so low right now. I'm so hormonal, or, I'm covered in acne. I'm hormonal. Or I had a huge fight with my husband because I'm so hormonal. It's like this sort of, we've been kind of branded as these like crazy beings that
Yeah.
sort of should be in pain because we're hormonal.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
my God, so true. We
it's
just have to
so
accept
true.
it.
And like we all have like, hormones. We all have endocrine function, men and women. We don't say to men like, you're so hormonal. Granted, we're more affected by our monthly cycles and men have daily cycles. But I think, coming back to the issue here is that there hasn't been enough research normalizing pain for women, and really just this like shameful narrative around menstruation is just, it runs so deeply. Like, I don't think we often even question or realize how we've been taught this really kind of shameful narrative around, our periods being these dirty things that are meant to cause a lot of pain, sanitary products. No one's ever questioned, like, why are they called sanitary products? This is not
Right.
really dirty. Why can't we just call them period products? I mean, now we're calling them period products,
Yeah.
but you still, in some places, you still get the sanitary product aisle 4 in the supermarket,
Mhm.
And I think, again, we just don't realize. And so as a result, because there is this shame around our periods, I think, from an early age, that stops girls going to their physician and wanting to talk about it,
Mhm.
right? Like
True.
taboo topic, like I remember at school, it would be like, if you got a tampon and someone would just, hide the tampon under their sleeve and give you the tampon. And so it's just like that shame is really, it's just so entrenched, and it starts at an early age. And I think as a result, young girls, they don't go to their physician. They're not taught about, what hormonal imbalance looks like. So again, they think it's normal to be covered in acne. They think it's normal to be doubled over in pain. And then if they do pluck up the courage to go to their physician is reinforcing that narrative by
Right.
saying, like in this case, it was, I went to my physician and then I said, I'm passing out. I'm vomiting. I spend most of my periods, lying on the bathroom floor. And the response was, periods are painful and you should take birth control to suppress your period. And that's where it all starts.
That is, yeah,
Um,
that's crazy. So how is it diagnosed ultimately? Is it like a test? Is it like, what is it?
so it's a really invasive procedure, which I believe like we're on the cusp of hopefully that changing. There's been some really promising research recently, and the hope is that we will be able to soon diagnose endo through the menstrual blood. However, as of now, it's done through what's known as a laparoscopic procedure,
Yeah.
which is like a keyhole surgery. And then, they look at the uterus and they see if there's scar tissue present, and they do what's called an excision surgery if it is there, and they remove the surrounding scar tissue. But, I meet women the whole time who have had 5, 7, 8, surgeries, which is just wild, which
Oh my God.
it
Yeah.
shows that it's not working. Again, there is innovation happening. I think with excision surgery now, there's a doctor called Dr. Sechkin who's actually based in New York, and he's doing this excision surgery where he's pulling the lesions out by the root. And I've actually met a few women that have had surgery with him and are no longer in pain. But again, it's just like I come back to education because I just think that's where it all begins. And it's educating physicians in medical school. And it's also just like educating young girls. You ask like women, certainly of my age, like what they remember from sex ed. And the only thing that anyone remembers is being taught how to put a condom on a banana.
Yeah, right.
It's like Cal Capri. We don't know anything about our bodies. We're
Right.
starting with like kind of knowledge like deficit. We really don't know anything about our bodies. And I think about kind of growing up, and yeah, I thought it was normal to be in pain. I thought it was normal to be covered in acne. And I think what we should be teaching young girls is what a healthy cycle looks like. And that really just simply starts with your periods shouldn't be painful.
Yeah.
And I equate pain not just to menstrual pain. I equate pain to feeling so low that you can't get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
So low that you don't want to go to school. People are really suffering with their cycles. And I think a lot of the time where these conditions are going undiagnosed, but they're also going misdiagnosed, like PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, is often just young women are just put on antidepressants and told that they have depression, when actually, if we dig in a little deeper, oftentimes these lows are around their luteal phase.
Yeah.
The phase that happens before the menstrual phase. And so actually putting someone on antidepressants isn't the best form of treatment, because it's really sort of like looking at the different phases. So there is just so much to unpack. And I also
So
feel like
what is Looni? How does Looni help? What is that?
so Looni, we have a supplement that is a blend of adaptogens, vitamins, nootropics, and minerals to help support hormonal balance. So bringing down inflammation is one way that our product does that. It also helps to boost serotonin as well. We have 5-HTP as an active ingredient. We have adaptogens like ashwagandha, which helps your body cope with stress. We have zinc in there, which helps to prevent breakouts. We have L-theanine, which research has shown helps with combating stress. That's a nootropic.
Yeah.
It helps bring a sense of calm. So this is our one product. And Looni's helped me so much in just terms of like managing my cycle. But what I always encourage for everyone is establish a toolbox, particularly if you've got a chronic condition like endo. I would be lying if I sat here and said, if you just take Looni, you're not going to have any issues again. And anybody who's saying that about anything, you shouldn't really trust. So I think it's taking a holistic approach. So supplementation, like something like Looni, taking magnesium, taking a probiotic, but also really looking and understanding your stress levels. Stress is is something that contributes to painful and uncomfortable cycles more than anyone begins to understand. And it's always the last thing that people want to look at.
Yeah.
People will change their diet before they really look at their stress and their cortisol levels. But oftentimes when I have a really painful period and it's a particularly bad one, I can go back and I can look at the month before and say, yeah, I had a really stressful month and I wasn't sleeping very well. So I think it's just establishing a toolbox. Looni can be one of those tools. But I think for me, what's really helped manage my endo is going on an anti-inflammatory diet, trying to avoid gluten, trying to avoid sugar, whilst also not being too restrictive. Acupuncture, so TCM, has been incredibly helpful. Also working with Chinese herbs, mindfulness. So that could be, yoga, that could be meditation, that could just be breath work.
Taking care of yourself. Yeah.
Taking care of yourself, pelvic floor massage. And sometimes, a lot of these things are obviously quite expensive, but it can be as small as like, okay, tonight I'm going to put my laptop and my work away at 8 p.m. and I'm going to run myself a bath, and I'm going to just bring my parasympathetic nervous system down. So I think the other side to all of this, which is something that sits at the heart of Looni, is community. So I think when it comes to battling, again, something like PCOS, endo, PMDD, infertility, some of these issues that affect us at our different points of our life cycle, or just, just managing the lows that come with your menstrual cycle, is actually finding community. And again, you know, I think periods have historically been so taboo. So a lot of the time we haven't really spoken about
Yeah, we don't
issues.
talk about it. Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, it's all about the communication. We have to like give it, like tell each other even the bad and the good so we can help each other. I mean, it's what's happening in menopause at the same time, you know? It's like finally people are talking about it, perimenopause, the symptoms, menopause, and it like really helps everyone. I had a friend just last week who was like she was like, I feel like I can't remember anything. And we're like, oh, we all have been going through that because perimenopause, you know what I mean? And it takes that kind of like community to be like, okay, I'm not alone. Now we have to find a solution, but like just knowing we're all going through it, it's half of it. Like, you know?
Yeah, I think you've really, really hit the nail on the head with that. It is half of it. And I think people underestimate the power of community. We often say at Looni that, you know, we believe that we heal in community. And I think that starts truly with, like, you know, my founder story. I was going through a really challenging time with fertility due to my endo. So I had an ectopic pregnancy, which for those that don't know is where the fetus begins to develop in the fallopian tube and cannot survive. If you catch it early enough, you can take a medication which can help and sometimes salvage your fallopian tube. But in my case, it was a little late, so I had to have baby and fallopian tube removed, and it all happened so quickly, and it was such a shock. And it was obviously the second surgery that I'd had in this area, because I'd already been diagnosed with endo and had the endo surgery. And I, you know, really, really had been longing for a child for a very, very long time, and always feared that I was going to have issues because of my endo. And again, I'll say that when I went to the hospital and I was bleeding, and I said to the doctor, do you think I'm having, and I remember not really fully even understanding probably what an ectopic is. I said, do you think I might be having an ectopic pregnancy? And he said, if you were having an ectopic pregnancy, you would be seriously ill right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day I was rushed to hospital, and I was in, you know, surgery pretty rapidly, having my tube removed.
Oh my God, it's so frustrating. It's so
It's so
frustrating.
frustrating. But I then went on to try again, and then I lost another baby. I had a miscarriage, and I honestly was probably in like one of the darkest place in my life, and I felt so alone. And I think, you know, when you go through these types of things, it's very hard for your family, for your partner, for your friends to support you. And I think the only person that I wanted to speak to and connect with about it was just somebody else that was going through it, who really understood, like, you know, the pain of longing for something, the fear of thinking that you might not get something that you long for so deeply. And so I started a WhatsApp community, which grew organically and beautifully. We did end up migrating it over to another platform, which initially was great, and then ended up not being the right move. So we've now migrated it back to WhatsApp, and we're essentially growing it from scratch. Sorry about that. We're essentially growing it from scratch. And it's a beautiful community where, you know, individuals heal in community for exactly the reason you said. It's sharing things like, you know, I'm freezing my eggs next week. Does anyone have any tips on how I can like support my body? Or I just lost a miscarriage. Does anyone know like how long the pain might last or the bleeding might last? And it's just like having people who understand it. And I think I'm such a proponent for community. I think it's everything. And I always say that I don't think I would sort of be where I am without community. So I think for anyone listening has, you know, a menstrual health condition like PCOS or endo or fibroids, or is struggling with fertility, please join our WhatsApp community. I'll send a link so we can share it, but it's a really, really beautiful place. And also you learn so much from the community that oftentimes you can't get this information from your physician or your OB.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you're going to get it, right? And it's never delivered with the kind of empathy that you need, right, at that time. So, I mean, all of these things, it's amazing. And you have a community and like resources and things to help you while you're going through it. In all of your research and all your advocacy, have you found, or has anybody even looked at, like, why are these things happening? How do you get it in the first place, right? Is there ways to prevent it?
That's a great question. I think, you know, the simple answer is no.
I mean, I figured that was it. And you know what I mean? And it's like, look, you and I were at a dinner with another scientist where it was like, it's, abundantly clear. And I think I asked the question to be redundant, but like, because no one ever does any research on us. Like we're 50% of the population and it's insane.
It's really, really insane. And it's hard not to get bogged down with like how messed up it is when you sort of look at the history. But I think at the same time, we have to kind of be forward thinking and optimistic. And there is some really fantastic research that is happening there. But in regards to endo, and I come back to endo just because that's the condition that I have and why I started Looni and the inspiration behind Looni. But we know now it's autoimmune. We know that it can be hereditary. We know that there women that have histories of like rape and sexual abuse, oftentimes endo is present there. So I think there are discoveries being made. I think now we're aware that there can be a connection with specific cancers and conditions like endometriosis. I mean, for example, in fibroids, taking fibroids as an example for another menstrual health condition, we know that it disproportionately affects Black women. And I think there's a few potential reasons behind that have been considered, like low vitamin D, I think higher stress levels at a younger age, and I think being exposed to other like harmful chemicals that can be in products. So I think, do you know what I think? There are so many reasons why a lot of these conditions are present, probably on the rise. I mean, that's the same with infertility, but then again, a lot of these issues have always been present, but now we have more awareness of them. So it's really hard to get a good gauge of like, are these conditions and things like infertility on the rise, or do we just have a kind of broader understanding of
there? And now we're counting. Wow. Well, it's amazing everything you're doing for that. It's like I have a young daughter who's on the verge of, about to start her period. And it's just like having this information is just so much more helpful. You know what I mean? In that community. So thank you for all you're doing. But that's not all.
Like younger girls, do you find like, do you feel a difference? Are they a bit more open when it comes to their cycles? Like, what are you seeing there with your daughter?
I mean, I'm not really seeing it yet because they're like a couple of years away for the most part, and they're all in that awkward phase of like they know that puberty is going to happen, but they don't want it to, and they're like, ooh, don't want to talk about it. But it's all about making sure you are talking about it, and like, don't worry, it's not a bad thing, and making it positive, and all the stuff that you're talking about. And I have twins, so I'm making sure that my son knows just as much as my daughter about each other's bodies. Right? Because did you see that? I can't remember who was doing it, going around interviewing men saying how many tampons or do you think a woman uses in a week?
It's crazy.
Or you're like, oh my God, you know nothing. Oh my God, this is crazy.
You know nothing. I know. It's absolutely wild. It's so
it's embarrassing for them.
Yeah, we're working with a charity at Looni called The Cycle. It's UK based and they do the majority of their work in India. And it's really a sanitation, organization. So they would go into, underdeveloped communities or countries like India and help them set up clean sanitation. So that's how it started. And now they've launched their menstrual health programs, which, endo is being specifically one of their focuses, but they're doing such incredible work around education. So it's educating community leaders, it's educating teachers, it's helping to educate physicians, young girls, but also young men.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just going to keep repeating the same issues. And I think, coming back to your point, I mean, it's funny, we laugh about it, right? Like these men on the street saying that they think a woman uses 4 tampons during the time of their period. But at the same time, that's why these issues haven't been considered vitally important when it comes to research.
Exactly.
And this is an example. So for every dollar that's put behind endo research, $200 is put behind diabetes research. And as I mentioned previously, like it's as prevalent as diabetes. So, sadly, you ask yourself, why is this? Well, this is a condition that affects women.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like an aside, the fact that like tampons and everything had a luxury tax affiliated with it until Nadia Okamoto, I think is her name. She went to like every governor and was like, why would you tax period products? Like it's a necessity. They should be free.
It's crazy.
So Amazing. I mean, this is incredible work, but this is not all you're doing. I mean, I know this. So, can we talk a little bit about your other kind of research and epilepsy and advocacy for that as well?
Yes. And I did also just want to say, with regards to Looni, I mentioned our supplement balance beam, and we do have another product that's coming out in Q3 of this year, which is going to be a topical to help with tender breasts and menstrual cramps, lower back pain. So the kind of the future plan is to continue developing products to help make everybody's cycles a little more easier. And obviously, we're very passionate about the education, which, if you follow us on Instagram and join our community, you'll see we really just help to encourage people to, I think, take control of their health and actually deepen their understanding of the menstrual cycle,
Mhm.
because it is this beautiful doorway into understanding our health more broadly. And I say
Yeah.
that they're not always comfortable, but sometimes, we need to go a little deeper, and it allows us to see where else in our lives, perhaps we have a bit of a shortfall on what we need to improve by actually just looking at how our cycles are playing out. So, and in regards to epilepsy and medical cannabis, so epilepsy, another chronic condition that I suffer from, which, was diagnosed earlier than my endo. Epilepsy it's a very, I guess, a heavy kind of burden that I think is carried within my family, because my sister has a more severe form of the condition. So I have a type of epilepsy called JME, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. And my older sister, Tamsin, has intractable epilepsy, which, essentially means that it's drug resistant. And she's 5 years older than me, and she lives in full-time care in the United Kingdom, which is really because, her seizures are so, severe, and she can have up to 100 tonic-clonic seizures a day. So she's really, her quality of life isn't great, and bless her, she's such a trooper. She's, a true warrior. I mean, all of her front teeth are fake because she's had seizures and just knocked them out.
Oh
She's
my
got,
God, yeah.
yeah, scars all over the front of her head because she, again, falls down without any warning. She can be in a conversation, she falls to the floor. And she started having seizures as a baby. And my epilepsy, because I have this type called juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, didn't start manifesting until teenage years. So it was such a shock for my family when I was diagnosed. And, epilepsy is a very, very stigmatized condition. You just look at the history and you see, people thought it meant that you were possessed by demons and that it was
Right.
contagious and locked away. And so again, has that like taboo nature to it. And I decided to start talking about my epilepsy, probably now, it was about 10 or so years ago. And I was DJing at the time. And I, no fault of her own, my mother always encouraged me not to talk about it, because
Yeah.
again, that's where that kind of, stigma exists. And she didn't want people to, I think, judge me or treat me differently. And so I kept it very much to myself. It's also, wasn't the most glamorous thing to talk about. And I was like DJing for all these like incredible brands like Chanel and Valentino and Fendi. And I was living a very sort of what I call a sparkly life. And it didn't really sort of seem to synergize with that. And I
Hmm.
think one day I remember coming back from the Glamour Awards of all places. And I was so inspired by some of the women who spoke at the awards. And I remember that was such a pivotal moment for me, because it was almost like my kind of coming out of the closet about my epilepsy. And whilst I didn't have a huge following or a huge platform, I had a following and a platform. And I just felt that I could do so much by just talking about it. And as soon as I started to kind of start the conversation about having this condition, it was so rewarding seeing how many people came forward and said that they had it, or thank you so much for talking about it. I have epilepsy. No one in the workplace knows that I have it. People that were in fashion, like were in the world I was working.
Yeah.
And it was like when I got on that train, I couldn't get off. And I think before I started talking about epilepsy and starting to kind of, I get involved in epilepsy advocacy, because I started to, I think, yeah, but before sort of getting involved, I felt a little bit, I always describe it as that I didn't feel kind of fully fulfilled, like my sort of spiritual cup felt a little bit empty. And I think a lot of that was due to the fact that I'd grown up with this challenging situation with a sibling that was very, very unwell. And I think after a few years of living this very glamorous and sparkly life as a DJ, working in this world and being dressed by all these beautiful brands, as amazing as it was, there was something inside that was just a bit missing. It felt like it was a little bit empty. And I think a lot of that was like this connection with my sister that I almost felt like I owed it to her to do something. And it was so easy to do something. It was like, okay, I know all these great brands. Let me start working on some collaborations and partnerships and just bringing a bit of light to this condition. And I remember when I was diagnosed with epilepsy, there was just no one talking about it. There was no one cool talking about it. Later found out that Prince was epileptic. Like no one knew Prince was epileptic until he was dead.
Oh my, I didn't know that until literally just now.
Yeah, I mean, there was one interview where he mentioned it, but I think, you know, for anyone that didn't see that, like I think it was circulated again, you know, once he passed away. But yeah, so I think with epilepsy, that's kind of where it started. And after a few years of advocacy, I was introduced to the medical cannabis plant. Well, I say medical to the cannabis plant. I was using it for medical purposes, and it completely changed my life. You know, it almost feels like an understatement to say that. It allowed me to wean off all of the anticonvulsant medicine that I was on, which had horrific side effects. Anyone that's taken anticonvulsants will know. And I think the challenge with something like epilepsy is, you know, you don't really have much of a choice. You don't take the choice. You risk falling down and hurting yourself. And you do take them, and you know, you have really, really severe side effects. And in my case, I was incredibly depressed and anxious. I had insomnia. I was like having trouble focusing. I was hyperactive. I mean, you name it. It was like hard to, because I started taking them when I was going through puberty. So it was hard to actually attribute what was just being a teen to taking you know, these not hardcore drugs. But, you know, cannabis is an incredible medicine, and it's suited well to some people. And I know, unfortunately, people who have the exact same type of epilepsy that I haven't, and haven't had the same, it hasn't had the same efficacious impact on that. But
not enough research to figure that out, why that is, right?
Yeah, but I think even if you look at just like standard anticonvulsant medicines like Keppra and Lamictal, like these drugs, again, well with some people and won't with others, you know. So we need more research in with epilepsy as well as a lot of these menstrual health conditions. But yeah, I mean, this moment of my life was pretty profound, you know, to start using cannabis. And
how long has that been then since you've been using cannabis alone?
I think it's been about 7 years now.
Amazing.
8. Yeah.
I mean, it's so great. And then you can actually use it and do it and get it legally, right? Like,
exactly. I mean, so the kind of crux of my, you know, advocacy work since has really been my family's journey to gain access to this medicine for my sister. Now, we don't know if this is going to have such an efficacious impact on her health as it has with mine, but we would love the opportunity just to try it. And I think I have sat down with different physicians, having decided to make a documentary, which is the other piece of work that I think we were going to get into. And I've sat down with different neurologists and different physicians to interview them, and had conversations as to whether or not they think that my sister would be a good candidate for, you know, medical cannabis. And because it's had such a positive impact, you know, on my health, and obviously we share much of the same DNA, they have really confirmed that they think she would be a perfect candidate. Now, my sister lives in the UK, as I mentioned, in full-time care, which is run by the NHS. And despite in the UK, we had a change in legislation in 2018. 4 patients have access on the NHS. Still to this day, 4 patients have
only 4 patients have access to medical cannabis. Yeah, I mean, that's it's like, what's the point? It's insanity. You're like, why does this take so long? It's 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And there are, you know, some patients are able to access it privately. Like in my sister's case, you know, again, I mentioned our public health care system, which is the NHS, runs the facility that she lives in. And so, you know, people always say to me, can't you like smuggle it in? Can't you give it to her when well, my sister, you know, she'll come home and she's there for 2 to 4 days. It's not going to work to give.
No. It needs to be regular. It needs to be figure out the dosage, etc. Like you can't just like give her some weight. Yeah. And so you made a documentary about this, yes?
I made a documentary about this. Yes, I made a documentary about this, which was really, you know, I guess at the heart of you know, our narrative in this documentary is really like a love story between my sister and I. It's really sort of about, you know, a sibling relationship, and I think my fight to gain access for this medicine that's been so effective for me, for my sister, but also really trying to bring people into this world of what it looks like for somebody to suffer with epilepsy and what it's like for the family as well. We don't often see, or we're not often exposed to this condition. And I think, you know, one of my missions has always been to how do we get people to be a bit more empathetic, because it's so easy. Throughout my life, I've seen a number of different people having seizures in public places. Now, you know, perhaps you might have also seen the same amount of people, but you know, you don't have that awareness on if that's a seizure or if that person is drunk lying on the floor. But I think if we can teach people like what to do if someone's having a seizure, you can save someone's life. Very, very simple. You know, you protect their head, you put them in the recovery position, you wait with them till they come to, you call an ambulance. And I think that, you know, it's mind-boggling to me how many like old wives' tales are still present with this condition. People will say, get a wallet, put a wallet in their mouth, they're going to swallow their tongue. You know, you can't swallow your tongue. You cannot swallow your tongue. But I meet intelligent people who think that this is something that happens with seizures the whole time. So
what should somebody do if they see it?
Like I said, they should put them in the recovery position. They should protect
What's the recovery position?
The recovery position is you put someone on one side, you put one of their legs across the other legs. But the most important key thing before the recovery position with epilepsy is to hold the person's head and protect their head from banging against the floor.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's becomes very dangerous. And, you know, for a lot of individuals like my sister, she has severe brain damage, you know, not just from the seizures, but also from multiple concussions. Which is what we see with, you know, NFL players for CTE, traumatic encephalopathy, which cannabis is also being fantastic because of its neuroprotective properties. So, you know, my family's still trying to get access to cannabis. We've been given every excuse under the sun. It's incredibly frustrating. I think we remain very realistic that given the severity of my sister's condition, we're not going to get miracles from it. But we would just have the opportunity to try it. So this documentary, it started off as really like we wanted to do a deep dive into the landscape of medical cannabis. And we started filming, you know, as I said, like neurologists, epileptologists, different physicians and politicians. And halfway through filming this 6-year project, a executive producer turned around to me and said, I don't think you have a film unless you make the film about the two sisters. He said, that's what people are going to care about. That's what's going to spark change, because everyone can relate to this idea of, you know, love for a family member, love for a sibling, and what you would do for, you know, for a family member. The film, which, you know, speaks to, I guess, you know, the sort of the more like educational film that we were trying to do before, like he was just like, that film's been made already. We can find that. There are a lot of those documentaries on Netflix. And he's like, I don't know if you're going to want to make this film so personal, because initially we were just characters within the film, and we had which shot terabytes of footage, shooting, you know, different stories, we'd actually done many interviews with like former NFL players. And so in the end, the story became about my sister and I.
Yeah. Where can people see it?
Well, right now we're still in the process of distributing it. You remember I was talking to you about United. I would say United Airlines, but now our time with United's come up. So I think the best thing to do is follow us on Instagram, which is Sisters Interrupted. Documentary's called Sisters Interrupted, and hopefully soon there'll be access to streaming it. As of now, we're just doing sort of like the festival circuit. So we've been screening it. We've screened and we got accepted to Rain Dance and Soho Film Festivals. So we are announcing virtual screenings and IRL screenings. But in terms of just streaming it more broadly, just watch this space and keep an eye out for announcements.
Love it. This has been fascinating. And I know that you are on a beach, so we're going to let you go. But before we do that, you know, just hit on the fact that you still are DJing. So anyone who wants to hire her, she's an amazing DJ. And there's one question that we always ask, and that is, what's the worst advice you've ever received?
The worst advice I've ever received. Okay, well, I guess it depends in which area of my life. But, you know, I go back to sort of thinking, I mean, I would hate for my mum to hear this because she's an incredible mum. But I do remember my mum always encouraging me to keep my epilepsy, which I mentioned, to myself, and not to share like these kind of personal hardships with other people, because that was very much her experience.
Yeah.
And I think as I started sharing like my shadows with others and became really vulnerable, I think that's when I think I blossomed as a person, but also I realized the power of vulnerability and how much that helps other people. And that's really sat at the root of all of my work. So I think that's probably
no, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, look, your mom does it for a real reason, and that's out of fear and love for you, right? You know, and you have to look at people's motivations when they give you this advice, because a lot of the bad advice comes from people wanting to protect you in a bubble where it's like, what's really best for you, you know, in your authentic self, you know, you have an instinct and intuition that tells you that's not right for you, right? So there's nothing wrong with what she's done. I think and you're a mom now, like we do that all the time. You know, we do it from the time they're babies. It's like, oh, watch out for that when they really do need to fall so they can get back up. You know what I mean? Literally. And so anyway, so thank you so much for this. This has been awesome and so educational. I know that so many people are going to relate to all these topics. So if people want to go and buy Looni, how can they get it?
They can get it if they go to our website, which is looni.co. That's LOONI.co. We are also selling at different retailers. We're also selling on Amazon as well. So, you know, please try our product. It's third-party tested, and please join our community as well, which is on WhatsApp. You can find that through our Instagram, through our website, and we'll also send you the link so that we can include it in the notes.
And then if people want to follow you, how do they follow you?
They want to follow me, they can follow me at Chelsea Leyland, Leyland.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Go have an amazing day in the sunshine. It's freezing in New York City, although sunny. Thank you, everyone, listening to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.